All right, so now we've hit the stage in our application where we need to deploy it. And this is actually a really easy step, but I wanted to go over it because even though we're doing the simplest deployment method, I still want to cover how it works and to make sure you know how to put this on a different machine. Now, the one caveat here is because we're doing the simplest method, the machine that you copy to has to have the .NET framework that supports 4.7.2. Now, you can change that to an earlier version of the framework if you'd prefer, so that those machines will have that version. But as long as they have Windows updates going, they should have the latest version, the runtimes for it. So let's look at what we need to do. Now, in our application, here's where we left off. We can actually close all of this out. Remember before we said if we right-click on the build time WPF application, say Open Folder in File Explorer, go to Bin, there's a debug folder, and there's this executable, which actually if we run this, hey, there it is. But we also have a lot of other stuff with it. And so we're going to make sure that we take care of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll close this out and we'll change from debug to release. Now, this doesn't do as much as you'd think it would do. Okay? The biggest thing it does is in debug mode, it remembers or holds on to our variables all the way until the end of the method or an end of the project, and it has some more debugging stuff in it. But it's a little bit more memory intensive. So, but the reason for that is because it wants to help us out when it comes to debugging. So we don't have a variable that was up above, but it got garbage collected, and so we don't know what that value was. Where with release, it's going to optimize our executable as much as possible. So all we need to do is now say build solution. That's it. Once it's done, we can right click on build time, go to open folder in File Explorer, go to bin. Now we have a release folder. It looks very similar to our debug folder. Now to deploy our application, we simply copy all of this. Now we don't have to copy the PDB for either of these if we don't want to. The PDB will allow us or help us when debugging a remote process. So we can connect to the exe and say, let's debug this, and the PDB will help us with where the lines of code are, match them up. So that's really important for debugging. But typically we don't deploy those with our application because otherwise a hacker could also debug our application. So we typically don't deploy those. Instead, we keep those on a private server somewhere every time we deploy. Okay, because every version will make a different PDB file. But otherwise, we don't need those files besides debugging. So whether you copy those is up to you or not. But otherwise, select everything here, right click and say send to a zipped folder. Okay, we can call this build time. And now that's your zip to deploy. You take this somewhere and you extract it. So let's copy this, and we're going to go to my C:temp folder, and let's go into demos, and we'll paste in this zip. And I'm going to say right click. I could extract all, and that's the built-in Windows. And so it brings up a dialog box like this. I also have 7-zip, which makes it a little bit easier. But let's deploy this just as it is and say extract. It's going to put it into a build time folder. And now I have this executable. This is what you run, the buildtime.exe. You run it. Notice it starts up just fine. There's no clients here because when we built this for release, it recreated this buildtimedb.db file, which is what you want. You want a blank file going out. Now, let's just say, for whatever reason, you made some modifications. I'm going to move this off the screen. You made some modifications to your release database. And you go, oh no, I didn't want to do that because I want to have a blank database when it actually goes out for release. No problem. right click on build time, go to open folder in File Explorer. Let's pull this down. We're going to go to bin. If you want to get rid of just release, just say delete. Now let's move this off the screen for a minute. If I am on release and I say build solution, let's pull this back down. In a clean version by deleting our release folder first. So with that being done, we copy it over to our demos folder, whatever, and then we can link to this. We can even create a shortcut if you wanted to, send a desktop, create a shortcut, and now we have that buildtime.exe. So that's all there is to deployment. Take that zip file and extract it wherever you want that has the runtime for .NET Framework 4.7.2. Okay? That's it for release. So once you've practiced that, go ahead and move on to the next lesson.